Hello, good evening, and welcome back. Tonight we've got three different topics of things to go over as a kind of self-congratulatory pat on the back for things that we thought would happen, we were pretty sure would happen, but they wouldn't admit this would happen, and now it has happened, and so the government or the people in charge are just overtly admitting it, and it's nice to keep things tame for once. So the first one from the article yesterday that you might remember from the Mail Online. I referenced the concern that the British government had from a terrorist perspective about people posting information about coronavirus. So, of course, the Mail, analysing what the case was and what the government's reaction had been, well, that's going to be flagged up, of course. So as the Mail reports on its own Mail report, Big Brother fury as the government uses Twitter as a propaganda tool to attack the Mail's coronavirus analysis. Angry at attack from Department of Health and Social Care's Twitter account in effort to rubbish report. Mail article raised questions about government's handling of crisis and challenged official scaremongering. Pointed out wildly inaccurate government predictions on the number of potential coronavirus deaths. MP said this was what good journalism is about and open debate is essential while criticising government. Department of Health and Social Care tried a rubbish article out of hand by calling it misleading. And it is lovely that the Daily Mail is taking this stance to say, hey, we should be able to question what the government is doing and we should be able to speak out. But, of course, it all seems rather self-centered. It's like, so does that mean we can question the legitimacy of America's election? Oh, no, because then we're conspiracy theorists, according to yourselves. So there is definite hypocrisy here, but hey, there's one for one so far. Yes, of course, they've been called out. They're not, as far as I'm aware, on a list of being a terrorist, because at least they're known. They have a backstory of who they are as the Daily Mail. But moving on, tax increases. Yay, Merry Christmas. While you're focused on having a week out of lockdown to actually have Christmas with your family, behind the scenes, old Dishy Rishi is cooking up a tax increase. He warns taxes will rise in the spring to balance the books after COVID crisis, and rules out becoming Prime Minister because he's got more than enough to get on with. So what Rees Mogg was saying as well. I'd rather have him. So Chancellor will unveil £100 billion plan for long-term infrastructure investment, which is going to be a nice segue into our last topic for tonight. Sunak will confirm £3 billion package for new spending to support the NHS, and the in particular, the overlooked backlog of surgery, which has, of course, been put on the back burner for quite a while because of the ever-present threat of the coof. However, he warned that Britain is experiencing an economic shock amid virus. It's not really amid the virus, though, is it? It's not really. To be perfectly honest, it's through government interference, isn't it? Let's be real. It's like, yes, initially, there was an economic shock. That supermarkets were bloody loving it. Because people were buying things out, the supermarkets were selling out, the supply chains couldn't keep up because there was so much high demand for staple foods, long-lasting foods, and toilet roll, of all things. So, yeah, their profits were monumental. Similarly for tobacco and alcohol throughout the lockdown. That's done tremendously well. So, yeah, that is quite the economic shock. It's done amazingly well. But, of course, they're instead talking about, oh, well, we haven't really had much money going into the economy. We haven't had much value being added. And I'm thinking, yeah, that's not because of the virus, though, is it? No. That's because you actively stopped people from being able to afford to live. And then, of course, when it came out about children not being able to eat for lack of school meals, your initial response was to say, well, that's a shame. You're on your own then. Not good luck. Not a good look. If you're going to be authoritarian in the first instance, you've got to follow through. Come on. If you're trying to say, you can trust us, we'll take care of you, then at least take care of the children. That's such an obvious oversight. Come on. Oh dear, it's just blind power grabs, isn't it? They're not really thinking these things through. So the Chancellor is set to outline a £100 billion plan for long-term infrastructure investment and a £3 billion for NHS. But in an interview ahead of his spending review on Wednesday, he warned that Britain is experiencing an economic shock that must be paid for somehow. So he said some combination of spending cuts. Yeah, sure. Austerity has a very bad rap, and you've just mentioned about your new investments, which is spending. So, not so sure about those spending cuts. And tax rises, that's the one from the Conservatives. Bloody good job, guys. Are anticipated following the crisis, but add that it is a question of timing, while the economy is in difficulty. Yes. Yeah. You mean to say increasing tax rates decreases the amount that people can work? Are you really openly admitting that? So, if you want a prosperous economy and people being able to live their best lives and enjoy life, you should lower tax rates. Because that seems to be what you're openly admitting, which is fine because we're on the same page. So, how's about we go along and actually use that? Why not? Let's just implement it, slot it right in, and say it's a difficult time. So what we're gonna do in order to allow you to recover from our heavy-handed approach is we're going to say, yep, you can do as you wish to, and we're gonna just halve tax rates across the board. Just sweeping legislation like that. Just do that for a year. See what the response is. I mean, it's going to suck for accountants because they're not going to be quite as useful anymore. So people are going to be paying tax instead of accountants. I mean, yes, there is more to accountants than just tax, but still, accountants will be hit probably the hardest if there was a tax rate cut. And so if people aren't hiding their money anymore, and then it's a place that's more worthy of investing in because you've got a better rate of return, because people are more willing to work because they're keeping more of their money, then, and of course, you're more willing to invest because you're keeping more of your gains, your return on investment, then of course there's going to be more money put into the economy. But let's wrap it up, because they want to spend money on infrastructure for their green report. And in fact, they mentioned it here. Oh yeah, they mentioned their borrowing has hit an all-time high for the month. Great. I don't think anybody really cares anymore. It's just to be expected. It really, really is. So he's saying that what he would like to do is implement the green strategy, of course, knowing that there's the much delayed national infrastructure strategy for £100 billion of long-term spending to help tackle the climate crisis and invest in transport. He will also alter the Treasury's Green Book, a set of rules to determine the value of government schemes, which is thought to favour London and the southeast of England. Right, because one such implementation of them are cycle lanes. How effective are the cycle lanes? Well, just one new biker is attracted for every £5,000 spent on the bikeways. The cycle lanes. The pop-up ones. The ones that are, of course, causing gridlock and chaos across the country. Yeah. And this is with a lower traffic load, of course, because people aren't allowed to move about as freely as they should be able to. So, even with that decreased volume of traffic, you're seeing very, very busy roads. And of course, it gets worse. It's not just that there are busy roads, but because of the way that they're done, where everybody is all segmented in, the issues that you get are ones like this, where there are emergency vehicles trying to come through. Similar thing on like smart motorways, that they're trying to come through, and they can't because there isn't anywhere for the cars to go. They can't get out the way. The emergency service vehicle cannot get through. That's how bad it is. That's how squished up on space that they are. And hey, we all like efficiency, don't get me wrong, but when it comes to this, I think the efficiency has a limit, and when you go a bit too far, you've overstretched it and it's no longer efficient. This is not an efficient use of space. It's simply not. And the only reason that we see photos of it getting this bad, of emergency service vehicles, which is something to focus on, is because of the state of the roads and how they've been dealt with. As you can see here, a cycle lane here and a cycle lane here on the side. For £5,000 for every one cyclist. It's ridiculous. So they say researchers looked at census figures on cycling from 01 to 11 and linked them to the sums invested in cycling infrastructure during the intervening period. The report also analysed the government's cycling spending plans announced in May. The Department for Transport said £2 billion will be spent on cycle lanes in the next 5 years. £2 billion on cycle lanes. Yeah. Of that, £250 million has been released to councils in England to build pop-up cycle lanes, which have been condemned for causing traffic jams, because, well, of course they have, because they have. But when it comes to trying to engineer people's behaviour, it's always going to be better to persuade somebody and explain things to them in a way that is beneficial for them, and then they do it out of their own accord. It's the same with any negotiation, with any interaction that you have in your own personal life. If you explain something to somebody in a way that makes them want to do it, then they're going to do it. If you try to force somebody to comply, you're going to get a lot of pushback, and in most instances, you're going to fail. You then have to use physical force in order to get them to comply. And thankfully, we can't do that as civilians. If only there was that limitation on government as well. But that's where they get their power from, men with guns. But if their men with guns can't get to the destination in time because of these pop-up cycle lanes, what are they going to do about it? And also, bear in mind that, yeah, you're going to have police trying to track people down. Meanwhile, you've got crimes being committed on mopeds. And, hey, mopeds can fit down cycle lanes. No problems. So was this very well thought through? No, not at all. Not at all. So data shows that Britain has one of the lowest rates in Europe of commuter cycling to work, 3%, possibly the weather. The equivalent figures for Germany and Denmark are 9% and 25% respectively. Yes, it's a big thing in Danish culture, and that's the point. So last night, Tory MP Craig McAnally said if the government is intent on getting us all to live healthy lives, there are other, far better ways to achieve that outcome. Yes, and it does not have to be through money. Believe it or not, money is not the answer of all problems. Anyway, let me know what you guys think down below. Always intrigued to hear what you guys have to say about all of this. Tax rate increases, and I'm trying to be very careful to not say tax rises or tax increases, because it may not be, and quite often it isn't if you look at the laughter curve. But the tax rate is increased. But at least they were called out for trying to push away the Mail's reporting on the COVID falsehoods. But there are still more investments, of course, to go ahead for cycle lanes. Cycle lanes, £2 billion. But let me know down below. Always intrigued to hear what you have to say. Like, comment, share, subscribe. All the good stuff does help out a lot. Thank you so much. And most of all, until next time, as always, have a good one.